On today's episode of Behind the Hub, we have a special guest with us. So we've got Luke Summerfield, Director of Product Strategy at HubSpot, and our very own CMS consultant, Vaughan Armstrong. I'll hand over to you two. Vaughan, I think you've got some questions.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks very much. And Luke, thanks very much for giving us some of your time today. I know you're a busy guy. So Laura started by introducing you and your title, but give us an idea of what an average day, an average week, if there is one, is for you in your job.
Yeah, so I would say the easiest way to summarize what I do is I partner with the GMs of each of the product lines to try to think about where do we want to be in the future in terms of where's the market going, what are our customer needs that are changing, and how can we at HubSpot build products to help support that over time. And so in terms of day-to-day, in addition to speaking to a lot of customers and a lot of amazing partners like yourselves to understand what you're seeing and you're seeing in the market and seeing in terms of using our product and customer needs, I also spend a lot of time doing market research, working with our product ops and our business ops teams to understand how, from a quantitative perspective, things are performing and where we want to be. I do a lot of presentations, a lot of meetings, trying to get folks aligned on where we need to go. And sometimes that'll also manifest itself into actually taking whatever we dream up to market. So there's been a number of hubs or features over the last year that I've worked with the product team to bring to market as well. So it's pretty vague, but it's really just helping figure out how do we continue to solve for customers now and into the future.
Great. Well, okay, today we're going to focus on one of those areas, which is the CMS or the websites area of HubSpot, and talking hopefully about some exciting website technology that's in and around at the moment. And one of the ones I'm particularly interested in, of course, is for HubSpot and for us as a partner. I like the exciting story of selling CMS on top of a CRM system. The two are the same platform, and we're also going to look at databases inside websites, so how HubDB comes into play, and hopefully we can thread some examples in that. So if that sounds good, let's go back to the start of time then, and start of websites. Do you remember what the first website page you created was?
I do. I remember. I don't even know how old I was, maybe 10 or 12. And my next door neighbor, Sean, and I would go down to his basement to his Gateway computer, if anyone listening remembers Gateways. And we would use text editor on his Gateway to code HTML files on text editor. And then we would upload them in through an FTP into I don't know if we were using GeoCities or whatever the hosting platform was at the time we were using, but it was legit coding HTML on .txt file, TXT files and using those. And we just built, little fun little things, see what we could build and tried to learn. So, and eventually got into a little CSS, but, and then eventually we got big time when we got, the old school Dreamweaver, and then it was so much easier from there. But that was my foray into getting into building websites.
So it's interesting. I'm a little bit older than you, and I was working for Cable and Wireless at the time, the international telecoms company, and they sent me on this course to do HTML, which was brand new. This was about 1995, 96, something like that. Mm-hmm. When you were still at school, no doubt. I did exactly the same as you, just coding there to create the first page. It's interesting. Even some of the guys in my team, I was asking the same, and almost everybody has started with building an HTML page. So it's still sort of there, but it's nice that we've moved on a little bit. And I picked up a statistic that, we're not even 30 years past that. And apparently there's now 1.13 billion websites in the world, according to Forbes. But the thing that frightened me was it said that 82% of those are inactive. So there's
wild.
200 million that are actually being used, if you like.
Wild.
What do you make of that?
There's a lot of junk out there. I think that's probably my take on it. Unfortunately, a lot of waste. Waste in terms of resources, just keeping those things alive. But yeah, I mean, there's always a lot of folks have their pet projects. They have projects that fall by the wayside. There's all types of different things that come up. And so, yeah, I imagine, I mean, at a certain point, you would think that there's going to be some type of way to flag those and start taking them down or something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe your first one is still up there. You never know.
Hopefully not.
Actually, we did a little bit of work talking to your ESG team recently about sustainability, and it's actually you bring up a good point there that there's possibly like 9 billion websites that are taking up a staggering amount of resources to keep running, and nobody's looking at them at all. So I like your idea that we should start taking some of these away. But what about if you think about let's move to today and you think about must-haves for websites? What do you think? What delights you and what disappoints you when you go on a website?
Well, I could probably do a whole interview just on this question, so I'll keep it short. I think the first thing that usually stands out to me, and if I think of like the process I go about building the site, it all starts with the story that you want to tell, and that, manifests itself in terms of the content. And so having really crisp, clear copywriting that tells that story about the pain that the visitor, your target audience is running into, the, value proposition of like, it doesn't have to be that way. Here's a better world. And then here's how we fulfill that promise, and there's a whole, a lot you can learn about how to do proper copywriting for websites, but really that story and starting with copy, I think is typically underinvested in or skipped or underappreciated, but it's just so massively critical to, capturing people's attention. And then you can ask yourself, well, how do we want to tell that story? And you can tell it in copy. But I think one thing that we see as we talk to customers and just where the market is going is that now video is one of the most popular formats for interacting. And that, I think, is going to only get accelerated in the B2B space as we start to look at the age of Gen Z who grew up on TikTok and Instagram, where their number one search engine is TikTok. It's not Google. They're learning through video. And so they're now moving into an age of 11 to 26 years old. They're moving into the workforce, and eventually that Gen Z will be the ones making purchasing decisions. And so just thinking about how do we need to adapt our websites around these preferences of new generations, video being really, really heavy. So I think video and thinking about how you can leverage video in a number of different ways, from telling the story to doing product explainers to onboarding to, all KB article videos, like lots that you can do with video. And I would say the other must-have, the last one I'll mention is, we also know that I think the original web was like a very one-way experience. You go onto a site and you just you kind of get talked at by the website. And I think we've started to dip our toes in a world where it becomes a two-way experience through like a chat-based UI. You see that with like website chats. I think that's only going to become more and more critical as AI, which I'm sure we'll dive into, proliferates and becomes more powerful. And so just thinking about how do you turn your website into an experience, into a two-way conversation, and then leveraging things like chat or like a conversational UI to do that, I think is going to become eventually table stakes.
So what really winds you up then when you get on a website and go, this just isn't doing it for me?
It's like an obstacle course to get through some of these sites just to finally get to the content you came there for. It's like you're navigating GDPR, you're navigating pop-ups, you're navigating ads, like I feel like my fingers tire out just clicking the X on a bunch of these things. So I think the mantra I try to instill with folks is less is better, and just go back to balancing the value you deliver to your customers on that site. Like, are we helping them in some way with the value you're extracting as part of the business? And I feel like a lot of times websites tip too heavy on let's ask versus give. And then it makes the ask easy. It's that whole Gary Vaynerchuk wrote about that in one of his books a few years back. So that's probably the number one thing I'm tearing my hair out. The other thing is the other thing I'll mention is going back to the story is just talking too much about yourself.
Yeah.
The reality is the people coming there don't really care about you or your business or any of that. They just care about how, what are the problems they have and how are you going to make my life better? Mm-hmm. And so just a very like egocentric, company centric type of talk and pages and not meeting the customer where they're at in their world, and then sort of eventually introducing the company. I think that kind of it gets me riled up as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think clear propositions are for me one of the key things that they've got to have. Mix of content types is absolutely right, because like you say, there's new generation coming through, but there's still other generations as well. So you can't build for one. Yeah. Right. But the disappointments, I have to say, and this is just a big beef in my marketing career, is meaningless words. I mean, you just read pages and you think, I still have no idea what you do, but you obviously think you're great at it. But I don't actually understand what you do. And I'm also with you on distracting stuff, distracting animation, distracting, just not having a clear what to do next. It frustrates me as well. And when every single CTA on the website call to action is contact us, then I get frustrated as well, because it's like, is that all you've got?
Yeah. I think on that too is the last thing I'll say is the other thing that bugs me, and this extends beyond just the website. I was just thinking about this the other day, is there was a service that, they're a vinyl company. They sell vinyls. I'm into vinyls and music. And you sign up for their subscription and they'll send you a vinyl every month of like curated independent artists. Pretty cool. They do a lot of like artwork. And I was like, this is pretty neat. I'm going to sign up for it. I went on their website. I went through the whole thing. I signed up for it. And ever since, I'm still getting blasted with ads and still getting blasted with when I visit their site to sign up. I'm like, now what? Going back to what you're saying, like, have a path, a thoughtful path. So I think that's the other thing is just, not being thoughtful about being too hyper focused on just new customers in the door. Absolutely important. And, it is a critical starting point, but there's so many other ways to leverage the website as a experience for folks once they are a customer, for cross-sell, for upsell, for helping them become successful and things like that. So that's my other kind of like gripe, is that the website's only about new, like buy now.
New customers only. New customers only.
Yeah, new customers only. They're important, but there's a lot more, Yeah.
Good. Okay, so another contrast I was thinking about between, if you like, old and new, beginning and what it is now is, when websites began, you really did have to build every single page. There was a human building every page, putting every bit of text on, every bit of image on. And it might surprise people to know, but Amazon don't actually build every one of their pages manually. So,
hopefully not.
there's a lot of technology that's behind a modern website. So what do you think maybe are some of the key technical components now of websites that are important to give the experience that you said you wanted to have when you go onto a good website?
There's like a whole direction we could take this in terms of very technical, speaking to developers and systems architects. But, considering most of the folks listening are probably more in the marketer bucket. Yep. I think from a marketing perspective, one of the best ways to think about your website is in a very modular, or sometimes they'll call it atomic, very modular format, where you have all of these blocks. Like, think of them like Lego blocks. You have all these Lego blocks, and for you as a marketer, you can determine what are all these Lego blocks that we want to pull together and assemble into some sort of an experience someone coming to your site can have.
Yep.
And so, to your point, back in the day, there wasn't Lego blocks. It was like just a static picture. There wasn't much you could do with it. And like, it is what it is. And when you shift to, I think the modern way of thinking about assembling an experience on a website is that very modular. You have all these blocks, and those blocks could be bits of content. They could be images, they could be videos, they could be modules, they could be sections, all of this these building blocks that you can assemble. When you start the website with that approach and build not only the templates and the modules and those pieces, but also think of your content as building blocks, your videos, your pieces of information. Now what that does is it helps you open the door to, one, being able to more efficiently assemble those Lego blocks without having to work with a developer. And that's really, really important for marketers in terms of being able to just get your work done and not get gatekept by having to get code changes every time you want to make a change. Two, it allows you to dynamically generate pages very, very quickly. So like you're talking about, when you look at an Amazon page, all of those pieces on the page are actually just a bunch of Lego blocks that the system has set up in a way to intelligently pull those blocks together to fit what you see. So it allows you to build these experiences in a more efficient, automated, scalable way. And the third thing it'll allow you to do is start to extend those Lego blocks into all different types of places. So I could use that Lego block on my website. I could use that same Lego block on my mobile app, on a billboard in Times Square, on push that into my social media. So when you start to have these modules and you start to build connections outside of just your website, it gives you a lot of ability to start having a consistent message across, like omni-channel distribution. So it's a little long-winded, but I think it really starts with the mindset shift of just how to think about building and approaching a site in the content in a very modular way. And then once you do that, it opens the door to, all these things that we talked about.
Okay. And then the way that that's actually delivered, of course, with HubSpot's CMS platform it's a service. It is not a piece of software. And I did a lot of WordPress work in an agency. So, that's probably the biggest experience I've got with websites outside of HubSpot. And of course, that was all about where you're going to put it when you've built it. And it's interesting. I still get marketing people saying to me, I'm going to put you in touch with IT because they want to know how big the server needs to be for the website when you've built it. And it's like, you don't need to have a server. So what do you think of the benefits to, again, the modern day website from it being a service rather than a piece of software sitting in a basement?
Yeah, I mean, this was a key decision that we made, I think, a few years back. I've been at HubSpot for going on 8.5, 9 years. And from the very beginning, we made the decision that we wanted to have our CMS as a fully hosted, fully managed, basically a SaaS-based CMS. And the reason is one of the things we saw is like, when you think about how do we build a world-class customer experience online? How do we build a world-class digital experience online? There's a lot of things that go into that. And one of the things, like if you look at if we actually let me step back and talk about the software industry in general. If you look at every other category of software, everything is SaaS. Yeah. It's like you would never think about downloading and self-managing like your account system, like your account system or your email system. It's like everyone's just like it's a standard. But for some reason, the web world is sort of stuck in the 90s. The website world, it's sort of stuck where maybe software was back when software was on CDs. And we've learned that there's a better way to approach software by managing it through a SaaS-based system. And so for us, when we thought about it and we looked at how much time and energy and resources are being put into just maintaining the system, to do security, to do plugin updates, to manage like down sites or hack sites, deal with hackers. There's so much time and energy. And we know as businesses, and marketers, you have very limited amounts of time and energy to spend. And so it doesn't make sense for you to waste that time and energy on maintaining the system. Instead, why not move to a SaaS-based system? Let us take care of all that for you. And that frees your time up to spend more time on building for your customer and learning about your customer, working on your copy, working on your flows on your site. And so for us, it was more of a decision of like, if at the end of the day, we want to, as a HubSpot mission, help millions of businesses grow better. And for a CMS, we want to help them grow better through personalized digital experiences. Like, let's let you focus on that and not just maintaining the server. And if you look, the entire industry is moving in that direction. If you look at the Shopify's, the Wix, the Squarespace, the HubSpot, like that is the direction. Even like, the place where some of the things that, WP Engine is starting to poke its direction towards, it's all moving towards SaaS. And so I think it's just inevitable that that's just where this just like every other category, this is where that category is going.
And you know what I think excites me most about the fact that it is a software on a service and the same platform as your CRM, as I mentioned right at the beginning, is there's always been this talk about personalization of websites so that we see Amazon, yes, they're fantastic at personalizing your experience, but they're spending millions and millions and millions of pounds on their website. So us as small businesses and helping medium-sized businesses who haven't got that sort of budget, I think the exciting thing about websites is the personalization. Now, I think that is a thing that's been one way. So you can take, if somebody fills in a form on a WordPress website, yes, of course, you can take it off there and stick it in your HubSpot marketing hub and do all the good things with it. But it's this reverse direction that I'm really interested in, is that now we can take the information about the person visiting that's sitting in our database and actually deliver content based on who that is. So, what's your vision of personalization of websites?
Yeah, again, I think this comes back to one of the things that at HubSpot we fundamentally believe. And I think one of the things that we fundamentally believe is that there's no world in the future where a company will be successful if they're not personalizing experience. I think that's already a differentiator in terms of why customers go as products, inevitably can become commoditized. It's, personalization and the experience becomes a differentiator. And, that's been proven out in the B2C world. And now, of course, like, I think those expectations of what we've expected in B2C are now bleeding into B2B. That's just how humans are. I don't put my B2B hat on and then take it off and put my B2C hat on. I just think of like, here's a great experience on Netflix. Why am I not getting that same great experience somewhere else? So, so we believe that, again, in order for businesses to grow better and to build experiences, that they have to be personalized. And so then the question is like, how do you go about actually doing that? Well, the first thing, there's a couple key components that it takes to personalize well. The first is having a really rich view of the world of your customer and the things they care about, the things they've done in the past, how they've interacted. And that really rich view is what our CRM is. It's like your source of truth for customer data. It's where you can pull everything into one place. And then, of course, if you're using our other hubs and you're engaging them with your sales reps, your service reps, all of that all goes and just makes that data better and better and better. And so more and more about them. So that's kind of step one, is like, how do we build a source of truth for our customer? And at HubSpot, we do that through our CRM and giving you a bunch of integrations to get all that data into one place and organized.
Yep.
And then the second thing is like, how do we build the logic around, or the decision-making around how do we take that data and actually like use it and leverage it to personalize? There's got to be some kind of connection logic there. And in the past, folks like Amazon, again, to your point, like having that data available to you and being able to write that logic was really expensive. You needed like legions of engineers to write all this logic. And what we've done, very similar to what we did with, marketing automation 10, 12 years ago, is we like brought that down and democratized it, made it easy for mere mortals who didn't have legions of developers to do. And so we have features within HubSpot CMS that allow you as a marketer without any coding to be able to set these logics and parameters up and basically build that personalization engine behind the scenes that leverages all the CRM data. And then the last thing is you need a place for it to actually like display and allow people to interact with like the personalized content. And so again, that's why the CMS is so critical in our suite of tools, is because it allows you to have that presentation layer, that kind of layer that a visitor can interact with or a customer can interact with. And when you bring those things together, you have the presentation layer of the CMS, you have the data store of the CRM, as you talked about earlier. Bringing those two things together makes magic happen. And that's something that is very, very difficult in other systems where you don't have those two, fundamental pillars built natively together. Not to mention, it just gets better and better when you add more hubs to it and you use more hubs because you're just enriching the data and you have more work to work with. So, yeah, that's a little background on just sort of what we believe and why we built it. And, I think personalization is going to be an area we continue to invest in very heavily over the next year or two.
And you said you thought maybe the attitude to hosting websites is a bit back in the 90s. What I find interesting when you start talking about personalization of website content is everybody thinks it's a fantastic idea. And if you think about email, we've been personalizing email for ages. And who would send out an email that's not personalized these days? You'd be
Right.
great. So we seem to have got it with email, but I think the thinking behind creating web pages and websites that are completely personalized, I still think maybe people are struggling a little bit to get the idea that we're not just building one page. We're building a page for somebody who's a customer, and we're building the same page for somebody who's not a customer, and we're building the same page for somebody who's in Spain. And just sort of it seems to sort of add a dimension that people are finding it hard to think about.
Yeah. Well, think about it. I like your analogy of email because you're exactly right. I mean, we've learned like, hey, you got to segment your audience. You got to build some different message, emails or offers for each segment. And then within that email we send out, we can use personalization to add their name, their company, some personalized information that's even more. So like, I think that's a really good analogy. And maybe another analogy is basically what we're doing today. If you think of your website as your number one sales rep, working 24 hours a day around the clock, like talking to prospects, talking to existing customers, it would be like, imagine an existing customer or a prospect calls up a sales rep and they get the pitch. And it's like, at that point in time, like, yeah, the pitch is helpful. It helps them understand how it's going to make their life better, yada, yada, yada. Now imagine one of your existing customer calls up wanting to know something else and they get the same pitch and they're like, dude, I got that already. I don't care about that. Like, and imagine you call back the next day and you get the same script. You call the next day, you get the same script. Like, how fast is that going to take to piss off that customer? Probably pretty quick. And that's what we're doing with our websites, is we're basically just giving them the same script, regardless of who they are, where they're coming, where in the funnel they are, and things like that. So the good news is, again, the tooling exists now to make it easy for mere mortals to take action on it. But to your point, it still can be a lot of work to do personalization well. And so I think you're spot on that, like, if I talk to 10 marketers, 9 out of 10 will be nodding their head along, or maybe even 10 out of 10 saying, yeah, I need to be doing personalization. Yeah. But when you actually like, where does it fit in my priorities because of the effort it can take, it's like a little bit lower. But one, tooling can make it faster. And two, I think we're going to see AI play a really big role in making personalization a lot easier and a lot more efficient to do at scale. And so I think if you haven't checked out personalization plus AI, that might be a new kind of frontier to start exploring.
Yeah. Going to come on to AI. One subject before that, though, is, as we know, if Amazon, like you described, have got all of these building blocks on their page, but they're pulling data into them, then of course that data is coming out of a database. It has to be sitting somewhere. Yep. And so you have HubDB in the platform, and that plays quite a big role in websites to do the content management there. And again, I contrast the old days where everything's got to be added manually. It's got to be changed manually, a block at a time. Maintenance was a real pain. But so let's start with a simple question: is why on earth would a website need a database behind it?
again, it kind of goes back to just that modular mindset. And how do you build out how do you actually like tactically build that out when you put it into practice? Databases are one way that you can do it. It's like if you get to like deep enough into a database, it's basically a table that's got rows and columns, just like a spreadsheet. And every cell is a Lego block that you can pull and assemble. And so, now there's like layers that live on top of those tables. It's not, as rudimentary, I guess MySQL is still a thing, but like, modern databases, like typically there's some kind of UI that lives on top of it that makes it easy to interact with the data. And so at HubSpot, we have, there's basically 3 databases that you would leverage to store your Lego blocks. The first one is our CRM. And so that's where you're storing all of your rich customer data, company data. And the second is HubDB, which is basically your database for content. And so images, videos, and copy, and all the content related assets. And then the third one is our file manager, which is all of your files. So that's your like audio files, your video files, all of that sort of lives in the file manager. And so those are the 3 databases where you can store those building blocks. And then again, once something's in there, you can pull that through when you're doing a drag and drop editing of a page, or when you're, starting to think about personalization and how to dynamically change the content, because you can start to make associations between these content types and objects. So you can make an association between a contact in your CRM, that database, and other content that's hosted in the CRM or content hosted in HubDB. And so you can start to make those associations and create rules of saying, hey, when this contact visits the page, I want to pull this specific content and display it to them. And it's going to be different than if a different associated content contact comes. And so you can, on the developer side, this is more speaking to the developers, that's where you can do some powerful personalization in terms of the logic you can build through the associations between database objects in HubSpot, and the fact that you have all that customer data, which typically don't, and reporting data. I think that's the other thing. I didn't mention this earlier. The other kind of missing piece of this, if you think of like how I used to build websites before I worked at HubSpot, I was at a web dev agency building sites, and we would use WordPress for the CMS. We would use Salesforce for the CRM. We would use Google Analytics for all of the reporting data. The thing is, like, none of that stuff talks to each other, and Google Analytics is all anonymous, and the stuff that's happening in WordPress. So anyway, I think, again, in HubSpot, reporting and all the performance data gets associated to contacts as well. So, when they visited, how they interact, all that stuff is in there as well, and you can leverage that too. So, those are the databases that we have and how you can work with them.
So actually, just for people watching, I just thought I'd throw up a screen on here that we can just have a quick look at a page that's actually got some content on, and let's have a little look at that.
While you're doing that, the last thing I'll say on databases too that makes them really powerful is, again, I think the way that you can connect to outside sources as well to keep things consistent. So using APIs or using some kind of connector like a Zapier, or we have OpsHub at HubSpot, you can sync the data in HubSpot with an external data source. The real common example I use is like, imagine you're a realtor and you have real estate listings. Well, a lot of times those real estate listings live in an MLS database, and you can pull that in and sync it with everything inside a HubSpot. So I think that's the other thing, is not only can you collect data in your database as you use HubSpot tools with customers, you can collect data in your database as people fill out forms or sign up as a member or interact with your site, but you can also sync it to outside databases as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. So this is just, again, a very simple example on our website where we've got a whole bunch of case studies, but we want to be able to let the people who are looking at the page choose what kind of case study they're on. Now, of course, in the old days, you'd probably do something like blog and tags, and then just click on the tags until they find something that they want. But here we want to actually be able to give them filters and be able to choose, what part of the tool they're looking for a case study on, what was the challenge, what the industry type might be on that. So what sits behind that is simply, this is the HubDB table, and you'll see that it's got things like the title and the descriptions and the links. And here, as we go across, here's where we're putting in the categories and the tool type and the challenge type. So by creating that Hub database, that would allow people to make those choices. But of course, the nice thing is you get a new case study and you simply go to the bottom and you add another line, you fill in all the data, and the next time somebody chooses back on the other page, then that will be one of the choices as well. So just from a maintenance point of view and a point of view of allowing people to choose, it's a good example. A second is just, we have a reference or where people give us write-ups, and again we've got this as a block on a page, and that is just a HubDB database with all of the content in there, and it just cycles round us. And if we get a new reference, we just stick it in there, and there's a new one available. So it sort of keeps some of the content everlasting, but also makes it much easier for the marketer just to add new content as they've got it.
Yeah, they're not going into SQL databases and adding new rows or anything crazy like that. It's like very, easy interface to add things in.
Yeah, and that one's very simple. We have a client who is pulling through onto 9 different country websites, 50,000 data points a day. So, and any update on any of those 50,000 is updated onto a whole bunch of product pages where they've got specifications and details of products. So, that's very simple, but it really, you can scale to pulling quite a lot of data.
Yeah, really good point. I mean, that's the power of this modular thinking and database and database driven content or dynamic content, is the scalability of it. Yep. So anyone listening who's like, man, I don't want to have to pop through to like 60 different pages to change a product name here. I just want to change it one place.
Yep.
This is the method that you could consider.
And to the client with all those products, they in the old days, that would be producing PDFs of the product to be downloaded, which would have to be updated every month and all those sorts of things. Instead of that, they just go onto a database and say, right, that's updated, that's changed, and tomorrow I will know that data will be live on my website. Good. Okay. Well, we've teased about AI, so let's finish and let's go on to the last subject, which is AI for content creation. So much discussion, of course, in AI in the world at the moment. Lots of new companies being formed by very rich people to get into AI. So let's start with the big debate: is it helpful or is it the annihilation of the human race?
Well, I think could go either way. So I think that's why why we need to be really smart about it. And I do appreciate how how thoughtful some of the leaders in the space like OpenAI are on how to think about those scenarios and build around them. But I think when the dust settles and everything, this is obviously a very, very large technological shift, but we've seen smaller shifts that have made fundamental differences in how people work and how we interact. I think when the dust settles, it's going to be a net positive. I think what it'll do is it will, again, just like we talked about the shift from having to manage a server to a SaaS-based CMS, frees up the marketer's time to do more impactful things. I feel like there will be a lot of work or tasks that are happening that are very manual, very redundant, very, like this could be done 10 times easier with a calculator versus like on paper, hand and pencil. We're like doing things hand and pencil, and it's like, why don't you just use this calculator and you'll get it done faster? There's going to be things like that tasks that we're manually doing that AI will basically be, the analogy would be the calculator to take care of. And what it'll do is it will free our time up. And humans are really good at filling our time. We're really good at figuring out, like, how can I be productive and valuable and contribute in different ways? And so my guess is that a chunk of the things that will get freed up, and it will free our time up to work on more impactful things and do better work and deeper work. It'll probably open up some new jobs that don't exist today. And so, yeah, I think overall it'll be a net positive for humanity, but time will tell. We're really early days.
I think one of the things that somebody expressed it to me is, if we can get rid of all of the soulless jobs in the world, the ones that take energy away from us rather than actually giving us energy, then it would be a better place. We'd be doing a better job. We'd enjoy our jobs a lot more. So if that's what AI can do, then I think that's a good option. But I think if I think about where you've got AI in the platform, clearly you're doing a lot of promotion at the moment around your content creator, and being able to work with content in blogs and sales emails and CTAs and those sorts of areas. But AI's been in the platform for longer than that, hasn't it?
It has. Maybe just in less visible ways, or less positioned, as outwardly as AI. I think eventually we're going through like a little AI buzz right now. My guess is that back in the day, companies, when I say back in the day, I mean like a few years ago, companies would leverage AI much more behind the scenes, and the actual way that a user in their software would interact, they might not even know that AI was doing any of that work. So like a good example where we've had it in the past is predictive lead scoring. And there's been some level of AI analysis of behaviors and trends to come together on like, these are the factors we should, sort of start to think about in terms of a good fit lead. But we didn't necessarily, a lot of companies don't necessarily, the customer's not directly interacting with the AI like you do in ChatGPT, where you're like directly talking to them. So it's a little more distinct. And I think right now there's like this really big excitement on AI. And so everything has AI, literally everyone's starting to come out with it. Eventually, I think we're going to get to a world where everything has AI, and it's like it's table stakes, and it's like we don't even think of it as AI. We just think of it as the tool. Yeah. And so we won't think of it as like, oh, I need to do editing with AI in Photoshop. Yeah. It's just going to be Photoshop. Yeah. And like one of the things you do is like some like behind the scenes AI stuff. So anyway, that's aside, but I think it's just going to end up being naturally woven into everything that we have, and it won't necessarily always be referenced. But to your question, there's a couple categories of AI, and I think the big one that's having its moment right now is generative AI, and where you're generating text and generating images and generating video. But there's also predictive AI, and so again, that's sort of what I was referencing earlier, where that's something that we have had in a number of different places. From the lead scoring, we've also have in Sales Hub, we have a call intelligence feature that sort of records and listens to calls and that your sales reps are having, and help give suggestions and kind of transcribe them. And all that is powered by AI behind the scenes. And then you have like another set of AI that is more around like data cleanup. And so some of the features in Ops Hub that are being leveraged to basically just like clean up your data and do like deduping and all of that. Like there's some AI behind the scenes that's helping make those matches and start to process through. So, given
that you're looking at product strategy, is there almost like an AI element to each of the hubs, and they've all got their own mini plans, or is it not quite like that? Is it more at a whole platform level? How do you weave it in?
If you ask me so we started, like I said, I'll give you a little inside baseball of what happened a little at probably every tech company, but I'll give you my perspective at HubSpot. And I know the AI story here because that was one of the projects that I helped organize and launch, was the content assistant and stuff that we're doing there. So back in July of last year, we had a small little engineering team that had a pet project that was like, hey, like, let's try to like do some text generation. That'd be really neat if you could like help a customer write a blog title like that. I think that would be really, really helpful. And you had it as like a little pet project. And it started building, it is just like 2 engineers, and it started building some traction to the point where it was like, this is really interesting. Like maybe we could actually do something with it. Now, timeline wise, I think OpenAI has existed for a really long time. And GPT-3 has been existed for, 2-3 years now. But the inflection point was when OpenAI launched ChatGPT, which is the user interface that lives on top of it. And I believe that was like October, November time of last year. And so we had been playing with it in July. And then in November, December, it was like, oh shit, like there's something here. Like this is starting to build traction as like a widespread thing, and it's starting to evolve very, very quickly. And so, we made the decision that we wanted to invest and spin out a product team that would just focus on building the feature Content Assistant. And Content Assistant originally was going to be just a tool for just our blog. It was a way for us to kind of dip our toe in the water. And as you probably saw across the industry, and as we saw the excitement and proliferation and the power of, and the maturity, the speed of maturity of AI in the industry from like the November to like the March timeframe was like wild. And so in that time, we decided that there's a lot more we can do to solve customer problems very, very quickly. And so we shifted to turning Content Assistant into a, this is more like how we think internally. We build what we call platform products that all product teams across the org can leverage. And then we have experience products, which are like the actual tools customers use, like blog and all that. So we switched Content Assistant and built out a generative AI platform behind the scenes that every team in HubSpot product can leverage and bake into their tools.
Okay.
And so to answer your question is that what started as let's just like dip our toe in the water with blog very quickly to change our philosophy to we believe AI is a very fundamental shift in how folks can grow better and how we can help our marketers, sales, and service folks do their jobs better. And so let's bake that in across the platform. And you're starting to see that as you see simple text generation get baked in, but we are like just scraping the surface. And, as you see now, what used to be a little novel, which is like generate some text, and it's still very helpful, still like a great feature, is now sort of like you see that in every platform. And so we're working on some really, really powerful stuff that I think you'll see over the next, 6 to 12 to 18 months. And I think where it gets really powerful is when we can improve the AI by tapping into all the other data that lives in your HubSpot account, your performance data, your contact and company data. And it just goes back to having AI that lives inside or as a part of a CRM platform becomes way more powerful. And you can do a lot more with it than if it lives sort of in its own world as like a separate like text generation app or something like that, and an image generation app over here.
So in that case, let's finish. Since we've been talking about websites for much of the theme, and you referenced how you thought AI might help in websites. Now, clearly, okay, it could help write a page, create a blog, those sorts of things. That's still just text. So where else do you think? Do you think we can expect to see AI in CMS platforms?
I think the long view will be that, today, if you think of like what someone needs to do to build out a site, there's obviously copywriting and like takes work. There's design work that needs to happen. There's images and maybe graphics that need to get created. There's coding that needs to happen. And my guess is that over time, AI will probably help out with all of those. It'll probably make it easier to spin up graphics. So you could imagine a world where you have a blog and there's a ton of context in that blog, and you can say one click, generate an image, and it just digests the blog, and based off the content does a 101 image based off of what's in there. You could do the same with video. So you could imagine that you have an ebook or something like some kind of long pillar page on your site, and you're like, I want to create, a really engaging video format of this, and then chop it up into video shorts that I can use in different places. I think AI is going to help with that. And so I think it's going to just streamline a lot of that kind of stuff. I think the other thing that it'll help with, which we already touched on these two, is that there's an immense opportunity to actually deliver on the promise of personalization. Not only be able to personalize better, but also like take some of the tedious tasks off the marketer's plate required that ends up making personalization like a lot of work. And so my guess is that it will switch to a world where once you have your segments defined and you have your goals set, there's probably like a really fast way to spin up different journeys on the site, but also the content that gets served to folks, even to the point where you could have a world in the far distant future of a website of one, where it's a website for a single individual, and it looks very, very different when you go to it versus when I go to it versus when someone else goes to it. And working in a modular based approach, leveraging AI to do all that logic, it opens the door to do something like that.
I think conversations, it's got to be conversations as well, actually being able to have conversations over the website.
Well, we've seen that, like, there's, again, I think some of this will come down to what you said earlier, which is like you have different audiences that have different preferences. And so there's always going to be some audience that's like, Luke, I don't want to talk to someone, like, just give me the, like, bite-size FAQ. Like, I just need to like see like the quick snapshot of it. I don't want to have to like go through all these like hoops just to like get to an answer by talking to a bot. And then you're going to have folks that are like, I don't want to call, so I'd rather talk. So I think just like we do today, you're going to see chat UI be leveraged for certain situations and for certain audiences. I think what will happen is it will just situations and audiences that are not possible to use chat today because the chat bot is not smart enough, or it doesn't have the right data, or it's not able to give valuable enough answer. I think we're just going to see probably it more interspersed or more sprinkled in. I don't think it's going to, like, we had this like crazy whiteboarding conversation at the beginning of the year, which is like, do websites just get replaced with like just a box and chat and that's it? Kind of like basically like Chat GPT. I don't think it's going to go that route. I think the story and the experiences that can be built beyond just a chat-based interface are really, really valuable. If you think of like a login area where a customer can log in and interact and take care of business and all that, like that's going to be tough to replace completely with a chat interface. But I think chat interfaces, you'll see them more commonly, and they'll probably augment a lot more of like what the core site is.
Good. Well, I think it's a very exciting area. And if you go back to what we started with, is that first HTML page as we were building with a bit of code, and to what it is now and what it will be over the next couple of years. I think it's a really, really exciting space.
Yeah. I guess the last thing I'll say, I know we're running up on time. The last thing that I think is important for everyone listening is that, like, you don't want to, and this is our philosophy at HubSpot, you don't want to put your AI on autopilot. AI should just be to help do the manual, like, I guess grunt work's not the right term, is probably not like the best way to say it, but like do the heavy lifting for you. And so I think it just shifts where the human is spending their time. It's a lot more on the strategy, on the guidance. It's a lot more on the editing, polishing, going deeper. And so I think the thing I would caution everyone on is just like, I don't know if it will ever replace humans in certain things like blog writing, but I think it will allow us to write better blogs, deeper blogs, more valuable blogs. And the AI is really just maybe like the purpose in writing the blog is ideation. Like, let's bounce some ideas around on good topics. And then on getting the first draft up, like scaffold up, and then editing and building out from there. And so
Just going back to like how AI might impact the website. What I would caution listeners is to not say, I'm going to let AI write all my content on my site. I think you're going to have I think you're going to find that you're going to, not write very good copy and probably not get the results you're looking for. But can AI help ideate, bounce ideas around, get like a first structure set up? Yeah. To work from? Yeah.
Like a member of the team rather than an excuse for you not to do things and let it do them instead of you.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's the intern. It's your new intern on the team.
Intelligent.
Intelligent
Luke, thanks
intern.
very much for your time today. You've been very generous with it. I know you've got lots on at the moment, but thank you very much. I'm sure you're looking forward to Inbound in a few weeks' time.
Always, every year.
We'll be listening out for any ideas as to where the platform's going. But for now, thanks very much for your time.
Of course. Thanks for the opportunity to chat with you and chat with the folks. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Right, I will